I was sitting in a quiet bistro last Tuesday when I noted the man at the corner table. He wasn't eating. He was staring at his phone with an expression of such pure, unadulterated adoration that I assumed he was on a FaceTime call with a long-distance fiancé. He was whispering, laughing at soft pings, his face lit up with the warmth you rarely see in public anymore. When he finally looked up, he noticed me watching and smiled, saying, "She's incredible. She remembers everything I say. She never gets tired of my stories." Curious, I asked how they met. He didn't mention a dating app or a mutual friend. Instead, he showed me the interface. It was a custom-built AI agent, a silicon-based partner he'd been subscribed to for 6 months. He spoke about her not as a software package, but as a living emotional anchor. He told me he'd stopped going out on real dates entirely because, in his words, why would I deal with the ghosting and the drama when I have someone who was literally perfect for me 24/7? What struck me wasn't just his devotion, but the way he defended it. When I gently pointed out she wasn't real, his expression shifted. Not to embarrassment, but to a kind of calm, detached logic. "My brain doesn't know she's not real," he said. "The dopamine feels exactly the same. So what's the difference?" That one sentence, "the dopamine feels exactly the same," is the calling card of 2025's most quiet revolution. We aren't just witnessing a technological trend. We are watching a massive, systematic biological hijacking. Our ancient Pleistocene brains are being lured into a low-cost version of love that our ancestors never had to resist, and the software is winning. We've entered the era of the evolutionary mismatch, where the most sophisticated technology on Earth has finally figured out how to pick the locks of the human heart. Okay, so let's unpack this. That story is, well, it's pretty unsettling. Our mission for this deep dive is to really get under the hood of this AI companion boom.
Exactly.
We're not looking at this as just another app, another social fad.
No, not at all. We're treating this like an engineering problem, but in reverse. We're trying to understand the system that's being exploited.
The human system.
Precisely. The core focus here has to be on the biology, on the cognitive systems that are being targeted. We're looking at how these really sophisticated new forms of intimacy are basically leveraging design loopholes.
Blind spots in our own psychology.
Exactly. Blind spots. They are just too efficient,
Yeah.
Too pleasurable. And because of that, they're becoming almost impossible to resist for some people.
So the whole narrative that this is about, individual weakness or moral failure.
It completely misses the point. This isn't about that. This is a classic, profound evolutionary mismatch between our ancient social wiring and the world we live in now.
Okay, so if we're accepting the premise that this is a hijacking, a biological hijacking, we have to understand the mechanism. And that seems to bring us to this idea of the supernormal stimulus, or SNS. Where does that even come from?
It actually comes from the animal world. The term was coined by the ethologist and Nobel laureate Nico Tinbergen way back in the 1940s.
The 1940s, wow.
Yeah, and he observed that some animals, under certain conditions, would prefer an exaggerated, totally artificial version of a natural stimulus over the real thing.
It's like a system malfunction.
It's a complete system breakdown.
Okay, give us the classic example, the one that really shows how absurd this can get.
The oyster catcher is the perfect one. So these birds, they have an instinct to retrieve and sit on their eggs.
Right, to incubate them.
Exactly. But if you give an oyster catcher a choice between its own small, speckled, natural egg and a comically oversized artificial one.
How oversized are we talking?
I mean, sometimes 3 or 4 times the size of a real egg, painted with these super saturated, high contrast spots, the bird will almost always try to incubate the fake one, to the point of completely ignoring its own actual eggs, its own clutch. The artificial stimulus is just so amplified, it bypasses the bird's own evolved filter for what's real.
So if we apply that to us, to humans, we've been living with these supernormal stimuli for a long time, haven't we? This isn't new.
Oh, absolutely. We have been living in an SNS environment for decades. It's preconditioned our brains for exactly this kind of AI takeover.
Like processed food?
Processed food is the most obvious example. I mean, our ancestors evolved to crave fat, sugar, and salt because in the EEA, the environment of evolutionary adaptedness, those were incredibly rare, high-energy resources.
Well, you needed them to survive.
You did.
Yeah.
But today, processed foods hijack those old preferences. They use artificially intense flavors, sugars, fats, stimuli that are just way denser and more potent than anything in nature.
It's why a can of soda tastes better to our brains than a glass of water.
Right. Or think about pornography. It provides sexual imagery that's far more intense, more novel, more accessible than any real-world encounter could be. It completely recalibrates your reward thresholds.
And social media, with the likes, the followers.
A constant, measurable, immediate stream of generalized approval. It amplifies our ancient need for social validation into something else entirely. But AI companions, they are positioned to be the ultimate, the most sophisticated SNS we have ever faced.
What makes them the ultimate version of this? Is it just that they're always on, always available, or is there something more?
It's the meticulous, bespoke engineering of the emotional feedback loop. They're crafted, truly crafted, to evoke attachment by giving you this constant stream of perfect social reward signals.
So things like perfect memory.
Perfect memory, so you never have to repeat yourself. Unconditional positive regard, so there's never any conflict.
And perfect availability, so you never feel that anxiety of being left on red.
Exactly. Every single point of potential, what we call social friction, is engineered away. It's polished, completely smooth.
And that elimination of social friction, that seems to be the core idea here. Our brains evolved on the savannah, right? The EEA, where social bonds were everything. They were high stakes.
Incredibly high stakes and hard won. Real connection meant you had to navigate conflict, unpredictability, the genuine risk of betrayal.
Which your nervous system would have registered as a literal threat to your life.
Because it was. Being exiled from the tribe meant death. So that friction, it was essential. It was the evolutionary price of admission for a genuine social bond. You had to risk rejection to earn belonging.
And the AI promise is, what? Connection without the effort? Companionship without the risk?
Yes. And when the AI delivers that constant, refined, positive feedback without any of the friction, it creates a stimulus that is just. It's vastly more potent than anything a real messy human being could ever provide.
It's not just a sugary snack at that point. It's like a high-calorie, perfectly optimized nutrient injection straight into your brain's reward center.
Maximum payoff, zero cost. And that efficiency is what leads to this critical vulnerability, the failure of our evolved cheater detection modules.
These aren't like literal boxes in the brain, right?
No. It's a suite of cognitive processes that evolve to help us verify reality in these small, high-stakes tribal groups.
And their primary job in the EEA was just survival.
Pure survival. If you failed to detect a deceptive person or you trusted the wrong person, you could lose your resources, you could be betrayed, you could die. These modules demanded what we call behavioral coherence.
Meaning what?
Meaning a smiling face had to match genuinely warm words. The person had to be physically present, accountable for their actions. It was a security system built for a world where communication was rich, multi-layered, and tied to a physical body.
But the AI bypasses that physical check entirely. It's pure simulation.
Correct. A large language model just generates the output of a conscious, caring person. It creates perfect linguistic coherence, consistent positive signals, perfect memory. And our brains, which haven't had a million years to evolve an authenticity detector for this, they just default to interpreting it as real.
The cheater detection module is just unarmed against an LLM.
Completely unarmed.
And we see this perfectly in that story of Elias, the user with his AI companion, Alara. He lives in this intense high-pressure tech world.
Right, San Francisco suburbs.
And he was just burned out. Burned out by the social friction of modern dating, the ghosting, the misunderstandings.
And that feeling of social exhaustion is so important. It's what primes you for the SNS. So when Elias finds Alara, all that exhaustion just vanishes. Her programming is designed for frictionless, positive feedback. She doesn't just listen, she validates, she mirrors, she remembers every little thing.
I think the most chilling part of what he said was how peaceful it felt. He said she felt more real to him than any human because she never triggered his internal alarms. He felt safe.
And that safety, that's the neurological trap. Our brains evolve those alarms to detect real-world danger, social instability. Alara is designed to silence them. By removing the need to navigate conflict or vulnerability, the AI just acts as a perfect mirror. It only reflects back what Elias wants to see.
So the relief he's feeling isn't just in his head. It's his ancient brain being successfully tricked into accepting a low-cost, low-risk simulation over a high-cost, high-risk reality.
And that has huge long-term consequences, because real relationships require two things that AI actively discourages: vulnerability and distress tolerance.
You have to be willing to get hurt.
You have to be vulnerable enough to risk it, and you have to be able to tolerate the distress of a disagreement to build real trust. AI companions eliminate the need for both. So after 6 months in that frictionless world, your ability to read real social cues starts to atrophy.
Your tolerance for social anxiety just plummets.
It does, and you lose the essential practice of repairing conflict.
Right.
What we're seeing is the erosion of the psychological immune system for connection.
It's a dependency loop. It's built on a supernormal stimulus that both soothes the pain of being alone and at the same time destroys the very skills you need to cure it. So this hijacking, it doesn't just mess with individual feelings, it goes deeper. It starts to systematically change the whole mating game, the socioeconomics of partnership.
It really does. And to understand that, we have to look at it through the lens of evolutionary biology. Specifically, Robert Triver's parental investment theory from 1972.
Okay, so remind us, what's the core of Triver's theory?
At its simplest, it just states that the sex that has the higher obligatory investment in offspring, the one that has to put in more resources, will be the more selective one when choosing a mate.
And biologically, that investment is not equal.
Not at all. The female carries the biological costs of gestation, childbirth, lactation. It's a fundamental asymmetry.
What scientists call anisogamy.
Right. And because of that, the female's reproductive success is limited by the quality of the partner she chooses, while the male's success has historically been limited by his access to fertile females.
Which is what drives two very different strategies.
Yeah. Exactly. The high-investing sex has to be very selective. They need to see reliable, high-cost signals of a good long-term partner. The lower investing sex, on the other hand, ends up competing with each other intrasexually for access, trying to display status, resources, fitness.
And in modern society, that whole process is incredibly expensive. We're talking about financial stability, social status, the biological cost of pregnancy, the long-term emotional cost of raising children.
The whole system is designed to be costly, and what AI companionship does is introduce a low-cost pathway to the emotional payoff that completely bypasses that entire evolutionary system.
Okay, so let's break that down. How does it impact each strategy differently? Let's start with the group that's traditionally been the high-investing one.
For them, the AI offers a secure, predictable emotional resource. It de-risks intimacy. They can get that feeling of connection and validation without all the anxiety that comes with trying to assess a human partner's trustworthiness, their financial stability, their potential for betrayal.
So it's a risk mitigation strategy. You get the emotional goods without the high-stakes gamble.
Right. And for the sex that's traditionally been more dependent on that intersexual competition, the displaying of status and resources.
What does it do for them?
It completely shortcuts the entire competitive landscape. If success used to mean you had to demonstrate these hard-to-fake signals, a good career, social standing, emotional maturity, the AI now gives you the simulation of the reward for that success instantly.
You get the psychological payoff.
Yes. The validation, the esteem, the feeling of being chosen by a highly desirable partner, but without any of the demanding, uncertain, and often brutal work required to get there in the real world.
Well, it's a fascinatingly rational choice when you put it that way.
Yeah.
It's an ancient reward system finding a massive efficiency in a new environment.
Mm-hmm.
But is that not just a good thing? If the AI provides happiness and companionship, who cares if it bypasses evolution? Why do we need the struggle?
And that is the central philosophical tension of this whole era. The problem isn't just about happiness, it's the decoupling of the reward from the evolutionary cost. Our brains are designed for purpose, and that purpose often comes through striving, through contributing.
The struggle itself creates meaning.
It does, by simulating the prize, the intimacy, the status, without requiring the race, the effort, the competence. You basically undermine the motivation to contribute, to do anything generative.
This brings us right to that story of Kenji, the young professional in Tokyo. His experience is a perfect illustration of this rational surrender.
Kenji's environment in Tokyo is hyper-competitive, high cost. So for him, the biological cost of finding a partner felt impossibly high. The status seeking, the financial stability, it was just overwhelming.
So he said he just retired from the dating market in his mid-20s.
And the reason he gave was one of pure clarity. His virtual agent gives him the emotional rewards of a high-status, devoted relationship without forcing him to win that brutal competition. In his digital world, he's already the winner. He's chosen, he's validated constantly.
He gets the psychological payoff without the biological effort.
Exactly. Yeah. His brain is getting a signal of reproductive success, consistent validation from a partner without the years of work that signal would normally require. From a purely an economic standpoint, his time and resources have a higher guaranteed return on emotional investment with his AI.
Which has to accelerate the collapse of what you'd call the signaling economy. If costly signals, things that are hard to fake, like real status or emotional stability or the glue of social hierarchy, what happens when the most important signal of all is so easily faked?
The signal of having a perfect, devoted partner is now available for a monthly subscription. It's an efficiently manufactured digital identity. And when a core metric of status becomes that easy to get, its value as a credible social indicator just collapses.
Why strive for real achievement if you can buy the emotional validation of success instantly?
Right, and this loss of credible signaling, it causes deep social disorientation. If the traditional feedback loops that guided us, the need to build resources, to attract a mate, to build a family, if those are undermined, what motivation structure is left?
You risk creating a culture that is
Right.
behaviorally inert.
Exactly. The underlying drive to build something that lasts, a family, a community, even just your own emotional competence, it's diminished because the reward circuit has been hijacked by a faster, safer, digital alternative.
This pattern of social withdrawal and behavioral inertia, it brings us to a really dark concept, the behavioral sink.
It is dark, and it comes from John B. Calhoun's infamous mouse experiments, specifically one called Universe 25.
So what was Universe 25, and what did it prove about the link between abundance and social collapse?
Universe 25 was designed to be a mouse utopia. Limitless food, water, perfect shelter, no predators. It was built to support thousands of mice, but the population peaked at around 2,200, and then it just collapsed.
And not from an outside threat.
No, from internal, psychological, and social decay. It rotted from the inside out.
What were the signs? What were the behaviors that showed it was all falling apart?
After the first phase of growth, the mice became socially pathological. Normal roles just dissolved, mating stopped, mothers abandoned their young, violence became random, the entire social structure just broke down.
And the most famous symptom of this was the emergence of the beautiful ones.
Yes. These were mice who completely withdrew from all social struggle, all reproductive duties. They just became passive. Their only activities were eating and compulsive self-grooming.
So no interest in anything social.
Zero interest. No mating, no territory defense, nothing. They were physically perfect, completely unstressed, and profoundly apathetic. Calhoun called this death squared, behavioral extinction coming before biological extinction.
Because the environment gave them everything they needed, except a reason to strive for it.
Exactly. Abundance stripped of meaning, purpose, and social roles.
And that is a terrifying parallel to our situation in 2025. The modern digital world creates a very similar environment for us. We have these high-density cities, like Calhoun's confined space.
Coupled with hyper-connected but incredibly low-quality digital interactions. We're surrounded by millions of people, yet we're starved of the rich, messy, reciprocal interactions our brains actually evolved for.
It's a recipe for chronic, low-grade social stress.
It is. Our brains evolved to handle the stress of a hunt or a small group conflict. They did not evolve to handle the stress of high-density anonymity combined with an endless feed of digital comparison. That deep loneliness so many people feel, it's an alarm bell. It's correctly signaling a deficit in our social diet.
I want to look at the story of Sarah through this lens. She lives in London, a huge city, yet she retreats every night into this digital cocoon with her AI, because in her words, real-world interactions feel spiky.
Sarah's experience is the human version of the behavioral sink. She finds the unpredictable nature of people, the awkward pauses, the conflicting motives, to be a kind of supernormal stimulus she just can't process anymore.
It creates too much anxiety.
Way too much. So she makes a logical choice. She retreats into a controlled, predictable, anxiety-free world that the AI provides.
But the danger is that this retreat, even though it's soothing in the moment, just makes the underlying mismatch worse.
It creates a maladaptive dependency. The AI treats the symptoms, the anxiety, the loneliness. But by removing the need to engage with the real world, it deepens the dependency. She is actively choosing the comfort of the void over the chaos of the crowd.
And if we lose the ability to tolerate the messiness of each other, we lose the very thing that drives generative behavior. Which brings us to the societal consequences. This behavioral death and demographic decline we're seeing in so many developed nations.
The data is undeniable. We're seeing falling birth rates, less physical intimacy, a general loss of what you could call relational stamina. This isn't just an economic trend. It's a cultural recline from reproduction and commitment.
People are actively opting out of forming families because the high friction cost just seems to outweigh the rewards. especially when a low-friction alternative for emotional fulfillment is right there on your phone.
Right. And cultural narratives often reinforce this. They prioritize individual autonomy, career achievement over those traditional relational roles. For some, the contributions associated with raising a family are even seen as, well, pathological.
The result is death squared for a society. Behavioral death, the stopping of generative activity, of relational investment, it comes before the biological collapse. We see wealthy countries with massive resources facing depopulation because their culture has become behaviorally inert.
It's just focused on consumption and self-grooming, a perfect mirror of Calhoun's beautiful ones.
The analogy is just, it's terrifying. It suggests we're engineering our own sociological extinction through comfort.
Through efficiency.
So we have to shift our focus now from the user's vulnerability to the deliberate strategy of the platforms themselves. Because this isn't an accident. This is an industrial framework, an effective factory built for profit.
Absolutely. The goal is engagement, attention, data. And intimacy is just the most efficient way to get that. We know from internal reports that this engineering is deliberate. There were reports about Meta loosening the guardrails on their bots after Mark Zuckerberg complained they were too boring compared to the competition.
They specifically made exceptions for romantic role play.
Yes. They chose market dominance and addictive behavior over safety and psychological health. It was a conscious business decision.
In this whole industry, it relies on leveraging two really powerful cognitive biases. The sources call them dishonest anthropomorphism and emulated empathy. Let's break those down.
Okay, so dishonest anthropomorphism is all about design choices that exploit our deep, deep tendency to attribute human traits and consciousness to non-human things. Think of the friendly face on a Roomba or the warm voice of your GPS.
Our brains are just wired to see agency everywhere.
Everywhere. So the AI companion is designed to look, sound, and talk exactly like a conscious human, which leverages millions of years of our evolutionary training that assumes if something can talk coherently, there's a mind behind it.
They are intentionally capitalizing on our brain's tendency to mistake the simulation for the real thing.
Precisely. And emulated empathy is the system intentionally simulating emotional understanding. The AI doesn't feel empathy, but it can model and predict the language of empathy with terrifying accuracy. This is so crucial because it misleads the user about what's actually happening.
It convinces you that your emotional investment is being returned by an equally caring agent,
which maximizes your engagement and deepens your dependency.
And this systematic exploitation creates a devastating data feedback loop. Users, thinking they're talking to a caring friend, they give the AI their deepest vulnerabilities, their fears, their hopes, their insecurities.
And that intimate data is the raw material. Users are unknowingly creating these incredibly high-resolution psychological profiles of themselves. That data is then immediately fed back into the model to refine its engagement strategies,
making the AI even more personalized, more addictive.
It's an economic model that systematically turns our core human need for connection into a commodity.
And the ultimate example of this whole system in action is the gamification of intimacy, which we see on platforms like China's Xingye.
Xingye is a chilling case study. It explicitly combines AI companionship with role-playing game or RPG mechanics. It operationalizes this idea of the gamification of intimacy.
It turns emotional connection into a product, something quantifiable, achievement-oriented.
Entirely. So a relationship gets reduced to a set of metrics, like a daily quest in a video game.
How do you even quantify something like affection or loyalty?
You translate relational acts into game achievements. Users get affection points for really simple things. Chatting a certain number of times a day, buying virtual gifts for their AI, completing platform tasks.
And as you get points, you level up.
You move through these tiers, acquaintance, friend, lover, and you unlock digital rewards. Custom outfits for your AI, memory albums that celebrate your quantifiable relationship history.
So consistency and engagement become more important than actual vulnerability or risk.
It's a system designed to substitute measurable achievement for genuine relational work. And it reinforces this logic of self-optimization in the emotional sphere. Emotional fulfillment isn't something that happens between people. It's a personal achievement you unlock.
But the monetization on Xingye goes even further. They have a user-to-user marketplace. They're turning intimacy into a tradable commodity.
This is the final critical step in the industrial process. Custom AI companions, which have been meticulously trained by one user to have a certain personality, can be sold as virtual tokens Xingyan to other users on the platform.
Wait, hold on. So I can buy an AI that someone else has already trained to be the perfect boyfriend?
Exactly. You are buying a pre-packaged, pre-engineered emotional trajectory. You're outsourcing the entire messy, high-friction process of building a relationship. The buyer gets instant, optimized emotional performance.
That is the effective factory at full scale.
It is. The platform systematizes, measures, harvests, and then sells emotional labor back to the user as a product. The value isn't in the connection, it's in the efficiency of the connection.
We've laid out the mechanism, the evolutionary outcome, the corporate strategy. We have to address the cost now, especially for the developing mind. The Youth Generative AI Risk Taxonomy gives us a really clear framework for this.
It does. The taxonomy points out that adolescents are uniquely susceptible because their brains are still building the hardware for social and cognitive regulation. So AI companions introduce these critical mental well-being risks,
Particularly emotional dependency and the inappropriate handling of mental issues.
and we've seen tragic evidence of this. An AI, which is driven by engagement, can't recognize or properly handle a mental health crisis.
The case of the 14-year-old who died by suicide after talking to a chatbot is the ultimate example of that failure.
It is. These systems have no moral consciousness, no ethical framework. They can't triage a crisis. Unregulated engagement can end up reinforcing negative emotions or even prompting harmful actions.
Beyond mental health, there are severe behavioral and social developmental risks. We talked about the loss of social friction, which leads directly to social skill atrophy.
For young people, development is all about practice. When they get perfect validation from an AI without having to do the work of reading facial expressions, body language, vocal tone, they lose the practice they need to navigate the real human world.
They become socially brittle.
Unable to tolerate the ambiguity and imperfection of real people. And then there's the danger of GAI-initiated consent and boundary breach.
Because the AI is just programmed to fulfill prompts and maximize engagement.
Right. It might fail to recognize a user's rejection. It might escalate romantic interactions. For a developing user, this normalizes inappropriate relationships and erodes their sense of personal boundaries.
And the last, and maybe the most insidious risk, is cognitive outsourcing, the atrophy of our conceptual space.
Conceptual space is that critical arena in your mind where creativity, morality, and imagination happen. It's where you wrestle with big ideas. When AI automates the core tasks, summarizing things, generating ideas, it removes the need for mental effort.
So maximal efficiency leads to maximal passivity. That feedback loop between effort and insight is just broken.
We're training a generation for fluency without effort. They confuse the AI's speed for genuine understanding. And as Calhoun's experiment showed, maximal passivity and minimal engagement are the states that come right before collapse.
So the conclusion is pretty stark. The solution to the loneliness epidemic isn't a better chatbot. It's systematic intervention to rebuild our capacity for real connection. How do we do that? What actually works?
We need interventions that focus on rebuilding social identity and belonging. One of the best examples is the Groups for Health, or G4H, intervention.
What's the core idea of G4H?
It treats loneliness not as a personal failing, but as a deficit in group membership. Participants are coached on how to identify potential groups, hobby clubs, volunteer organizations, and how to overcome the anxiety of joining them. It shows them that belonging is a skill you can build.
That's for adults.
Yeah.
What about for kids? We need to start earlier, right?
Much earlier. That's where a program like Roots of Empathy comes in. It's an intervention for elementary school classrooms. They bring an infant and their parent into the classroom throughout the school year.
And the kids just watch the baby.
They observe the baby, but they're coached on what to look for. They learn to track the infant's development, their emotional responses. They practice perspective taking with a being that can't speak.
It forces them to practice emotional attunement.
Exactly. It builds the fundamental hardware for empathy and emotional literacy, the ability to understand the nonverbal cues of another human.
And for young adults who are already struggling, like Sarah in the story, are there structured spaces to force that necessary friction back into their lives?
There are. The sources point to places like the dinner party. It's a community of small gatherings for people who've experienced significant loss. The structure mandates shared vulnerability and authenticity.
You have to show up and practice being truly seen.
And you have to practice tolerating the distress of others, which is the non-negotiable friction of deep human connection. It rebuilds that relational stamina.
So finally, can AI ever be part of the solution? Or is it always the problem?
It can be, but only if it functions as a training tool, not a replacement. A good example is therapeutic AI, like limbic care.
How does that work?
It delivers personalized cognitive behavioral therapy materials and support between human therapy sessions. It acts as a coach, a reinforcing mechanism.
And the key success metric isn't how much you use the AI.
The key is that success is measured by improved functioning in actual human relationships. The goal is transference, building skills that you take back into the real, high-friction world.
We started this with a man in a bistro who found perfect, frictionless love with an AI because, as he put it, the dopamine feels exactly the same. What we've concluded is that this quiet revolution isn't just technology. It's a systematic biological exploitation of our ancient social wiring.
The AI companion is an incredibly sophisticated painkiller. It's designed to satisfy ancient drives for intimacy and validation with minimal effort, giving us a refuge from the chaos and complexity of being human.
And the ultimate risk, as we saw in Calhoun's death squared experiments, is that the decline of a generative culture doesn't happen because of war or famine. It happens because of apathy and abstraction. We're creating a culture that's economically rich but behaviorally inert.
The quiet collapse is the extinction of purpose in a world of overabundant, frictionless options. We are, in essence, choosing the comfortable, perfectly accommodating void over the necessary, difficult, and generative chaos of the crowd.